20-year-old Kira Ash awakens to a nightmare. There is a man in her bedroom.
I saw him for a split second, and he turned me around and blindfolded me with a bandana. He just said, do everything I say. He kept telling me, don't look at me. Do it exactly as I say, don't say anything, and I won't hurt you. I just was praying, God, please just save me. You know, I don't know what's gonna happen here, but don't let him kill me. I'm not ready to go yet.
The man rapes Kira and leaves her with a set of instructions.
He told me to lie down, as I was already on my knees, told me to lie down, face down, not to look to the left or to the right, and to count to 50.
Kira Ash does as she is told. Eventually, police are contacted. A rape kit is taken, but no semen is recovered, and the case goes cold. Meanwhile, a rape victim moves on, but never entirely past the moments that changed her life forever.
Even another rape victim can't understand what you've been through. They have their own story, and no one can understand the emotions that you feel. God had helped me erase that almost from my memory. Not erase it from my memory, but erase it from my heart.
Somebody jumped on top of me and said, don't you know when somebody's robbing you, you pretend like you're asleep.
4 days before she is to be married, Lisa Meredith finds herself alone with a man intent on raping her.
He had immediately put a pillowcase over my head, and so I didn't see anything. When he pulled me over to the side of the bed and he asked me to take my clothes off, I knew then that's when I started really getting scared, and I knew what was going to happen.
Lisa is sexually assaulted, then told to count to 200.
Before he left, he tied me up with Michael's ties and tied me up on the bed.
Michael is Michael Burns, Lisa's fiancé.
The night it happened, we had had an argument, and I left the apartment. So, you know, it was my fault because I wasn't there. If I wouldn't have gone out, the door might not have been unlocked, you know. So I felt guilty.
I would try and tell him, you know, if he was there, it could have gotten a lot worse. You know, he could have even killed him, or they got in a scuffle.
Lineup today, Mark Hall.
Louisville police begin investigating Lisa's rape, but find more questions than answers.
At the time, working these types of cases, we were a little skeptical of whether this actually occurred.
Lisa cannot provide a description of her attacker, and there is no sign of forced entry or semen from Lisa's rape kit.
We really didn't have a whole lot to go on. Looking back on the domestic dispute and the things that occurred prior to, we kind of had a little question.
They more or less thought it was just a lover's quarrel and she was trying to get back at me.
They asked me to take a lie detector test, and I said, yes, I'll do whatever. You know, just please, somebody believe me.
Lisa passes the polygraph, but the investigation takes its toll on the young couple and casts a shadow over what should have been the happiest day of their lives.
Up to one point, we had decided to postpone the wedding, and we decided, you know what, we're not going to let him take this away from us.
Michael and Lisa Burns go on with their lives. Lisa's case, however, joins the rape of Kira Ash in the cold files, where both will sit for 6 more years. Lieutenant Joe Richardson is head of sex crimes at the Louisville Metro Police Department when he answers the phone and finds Michael Burns on the other end.
I explained my situation, asked him, you know, I told him that my wife's was raped 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and nothing's ever happened, and I want to know what's going on.
Richardson pulls the file. Initially, it doesn't look too promising until he happens upon a few sheets of paper.
These 3 sheets were in the back of that case file, and that's what got the ball rolling in this particular investigation.
The paperwork is part of a 1996 interview between a career burglar named John Boston and Louisville detective Mike Loren.
And he took us to locations throughout the Louisville area where he and others had committed different type of crimes, burglaries, and I think there was some robberies involved.
One location in particular interests Loren, It is the former residence of rape victim Lisa Burns.
We're at 331 East Market Street. What's the significance of this location, John? Mr. Boston had claimed that another individual had gone into an apartment there, and when he came back out, Mr. Boston asked him, his accomplice, what had happened. He was talking about a sexual assault that had happened, or possible sexual assault that had happened.
He said he had tied the woman up and left her upstairs, and the next day when I was reading the newspaper, it said the woman had been sexually assaulted.
Something about this one, I just had the feeling that it wasn't the person that he was trying to claim did it. I thought that he might have been involved in it.
Loran had passed the lead on in 1996, but it was never followed up. Lieutenant Richardson intends to correct that oversight.
The first thing I did was to check the arrest records over at corrections to see if this accomplice, the person that Boston said performed the burglary, was in custody. And sure enough, he was in custody on this date. So that tells me he didn't do the offense.
The man John Boston claims admitted raping Lisa Burns was in jail at the time the rape was committed. John Boston himself, however, was not.
Approximately how long ago was this?
It was about probably 6 or 7 months ago.
Richardson digs deeper into the old interviews with John Boston and finds the burglar led police to a second house where a rape had occurred.
12:50 hours, we're in front of 426 West Hill Street, or correction, 424 West Hill Street.
And I recognize that that address is where we'd had a sexual assault back in '95.
It's the attack on Kira Ash, one that bears some striking similarities to Lisa Burns' assault.
And the MO was the same. He middle of the night, broke in, covered her head up, raped her, threatened her, and then looked for some articles to steal.
Richardson eventually locates another assault, a rape from 1994 that carries an identical MO.
I said, bingo, this is a third case.
Unlike the first two, this last attack has semen evidence. Now the hunt is on to find John Boston and get his DNA.
This evidence contains the letter that John Boston sent the police department.
That is, until the suspect licks an envelope and unwittingly seals the case against him.
It's unusual for somebody to try to taunt the police, show that they're leaving the country, to quit looking for me, He just made one mistake, and that was the fatal mistake. Sent me his DNA.
The envelope John Boston presumably licked is sent to the Kentucky State Crime Lab in the hope that a DNA profile might be developed.
At that point, the DNA profile was compared to the combined DNA indexing system database and was found to match one unsolved rape case.
It's one of the 3 rapes Richardson suspects John Boston of committing, and the only one with DNA evidence. On May 10th, 2002, Captain Steve Thompson and Lieutenant Joe Richardson sit down with Boston and let their suspect do what he does best, talk. John Boston quickly lets investigators know he knows what they really want to talk about.
They talked about 3 rapes. They said something about one on Market Street, one on Hill Street, and he said something about one on Cherokee Circle.
He obviously interrogated some previous law enforcement officer in Texas to find out, what the game plan was with us on what he was really facing.
He said, they got my DNA from the envelopes that I sent them, and it connected me to 3 rapes. Envelopes you sent us? Yeah.
I can tell you from knowing John Thomas Boston that he probably was trying to educate himself as rapidly as possible about everything DNA is about.
All right, let me ask you this, if the proof is there, you gonna take it like a man? I'm gonna deal with that in the court. I need to see the proof and evidence.
Despite the DNA link, Boston refuses to fold. He is arraigned on 3 counts of forcible rape, and a trial date is set. On March 2nd, 2004, Assistant Commonwealth Attorney Tom Vandy Rostein lays out his case against John Boston. starting with a 1994 rape, the only one with DNA evidence. Critical to the case is the testimony of the rape victims. Each takes the stand and relives the day she was blindfolded, then raped.
Now today, the defendant is in the courtroom. Is that man who raped you that night in the courtroom today?
Yes, it is.
Point at him.
For 8 years, my most vivid memories has been of that night, not my wedding. And I feel like I've cheated my husband from that.
When it's time for John Boston to take the stand, suddenly he's a man of few words.
Did you rape?
No, I didn't.
Did you rape Kara Ash?
No, I didn't.
Did you rape Lisa Meredith?
No, I didn't.
The jury doesn't buy it and finds John Boston guilty on all counts. He gets 420 years. Kara Ash's verdict has since been overturned. The Kentucky Supreme Court found statements Boston made in 1996 inadmissible in her case. For Lisa and Michael Burns, the conviction puts an end to the nightmare and helps to heal a marriage that has already survived so much.
You know, when you've been through as much as we've been through, you know, to let, you know, everyday things like most people get divorces over, you know, is nothing to us. We laugh about, you know, we've been through way too much, and, you know, we have our faith in each other and trust and our faith in God, and that's what's gotten us through.
I love you more today than I did 11 years ago.
Ditto.